On August 10, 2013, seismic early warning systems detected unusual activity off the coast of California. What was originally believed to be a series of earthquakes was, in fact, the movement of an enormous creature, the first of what would later be known as the kaiju. When it emerged from San Francisco Bay, this kaiju left a trail of destruction in its wake. It took 6 days and thousands of lives before it was finally stopped, destroyed by nuclear weaponry that left portions of the Pacific coast uninhabitable for centuries to come. The dead were mourned, the attack memorialized, and the world attempted to move on. However, 6 months later, the events of San Francisco were repeated in Manila, and then again in Cabo San Lucas, and again in Sydney after that. When these attacks could no longer be dismissed as mere anomalies, but the beginning of a new kind of war, the United Nations came together, setting aside their differences in favor of a new international alliance, the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps. A massive organization unique in human history, the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps was formed with the backing of 21 Pacific nations, but supported and funded by countries across the entire world. Its mission was to study and repel kaiju attacks, while safeguarding the populace of affected cities and regions. The scientific component of the Defense Corps was known as K-Science, responsible for the detection and analysis of kaiju. Through the study of water displacement, radiation, and toxicity, K-Science was able to determine the strength and lethality of any kaiju and assign it a grade on the Serizawa scale. Depending on its category, which numbered from 1 through 5, an appropriate response could be organized and a defense mounted. Subdivisions within K-Science included bioharvesters, personnel required to venture into the corpses of kaiju and obtain organs and samples necessary for their research, cryptozoologists, responsible for analyzing each kaiju to assess its behavior and potential weaknesses, and hazmat teams sent to neutralize toxic threats left in the aftermath of a kaiju's attack. With the discovery that every kaiju appeared from within an interdimensional portal known as the Breach, K-Watch was established to monitor this area of the Pacific and send emergency alerts. The military aspect of the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps was centered around the Jaeger program. The brainchild of Dr. Jasper Schoenfeld, Jaegers were enormous mechanical constructs able to fight and defeat kaiju on their own terms. Each Jaeger was designed and constructed by individual nations, but used exclusively at the discretion of the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps. To facilitate and maintain these Jaegers, enormous facilities known as shatter domes were established in strategic sites bordering the Pacific. Each was a combination of an operating base and factory, deploying Jaeger teams against kaiju and performing repairs and maintenance between missions. Shatter domes were constructed in Lima, Anchorage, Los Angeles, Vladivostok, Tokyo, Sydney, and Panama City. The Hong Kong Shatter Dome was the first completed, and served as the principal headquarters of the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps as a whole. Despite a series of mechanical flaws, the first Jaegers rushed into service quickly proved their worth. Increasingly effective Jaegers were assembled across the world until they had become a reliable method of defeating kaiju, while avoiding toxic fallout that resulted from the use of more conventional weaponry. Their success made the Jaegers and their pilots worldwide celebrities. Despite their unbroken series of victories, neither the Jaegers nor the Defense Corps were successful in destroying the breach itself. A series of attacks were conducted on the portal, but each merely bounced off, failing to make any meaningful impact. By 2020, the tide had begun to turn. Attacks by higher category kaiju became more regular, while Jaeger victories grew intermittent. The loss of over 24 Jaegers put the viability of the program into question, and by 2025, it had been shut down altogether. In its place, the United Nations began funding the Anti-Kaiju Wall, an enormous fortification bordering every populated region in the Pacific Rim. Dubbed the Wall of Life program, millions were hired to construct what was considered a permanent and far more cost-effective solution to the kaiju problem. When a segment of the wall in Sydney was easily destroyed by a kaiju, it was only the emergency reactivation of the Jaeger Striker Eureka, deactivated only days earlier, that saved the city. Now, without any reliable means of defeating the kaiju, riots and protests spread worldwide. Reduced to a single shatter dome and 8 months of funding available to them, the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps relocated its 4 remaining Jaegers, Striker Eureka, Gypsy Danger, Crimson Typhoon, and Cherno Alpha, to Hong Kong. Under the direction of Marshal Stacker Pentecost, head of the Defense Corps, these Jaegers commenced an operation independent from the efforts of the United Nations to seal the breach once and for all. Crimson Typhoon and Cherno Alpha would be lost during a kaiju attack on Hong Kong, but the insights gained here would provide the Defense Corps with the knowledge they desperately needed to conduct a successful attack on the breach. Even after the unprecedented emergence of 3 kaiju from the breach, through the efforts of Striker Eureka, Gypsy Danger, and their crews, the interdimensional portal was closed. In the wake of this victory, the war clock that had been reset after every kaiju attack was finally shut down. The Pan-Pacific Defense Corps had achieved the impossible and canceled the apocalypse.
The Templin Institute investigates alternate worlds and realities. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to directly support us, vote in polls to determine future topics, and receive some cool rewards, please consider pledging to our Patreon page.